Hello, and welcome to Climatics IC, Onboarding. This learning video covers essential information for the onboarding process. Let's start with a brief introduction. Digitalization has become a mainstream topic for our OEM customers to drive and create value to their business. Climatics IC is a cloud solution that enables the controller to log data generated by the asset into the cloud, for the purpose for remote monitoring and servicing. To ensure highest availability on Climatics IC, the services are running on geo-redundant servers in Europe. The status of the running services can be monitored. On the landing page, also information about new deployments are provided. You are welcome to sign up to receive notifications about Climatics IC services. The controller acts as the server and communicates to Climatics IC. The certificates are renewed with every deployment and comply with the highest security standards. The cloud items or the data points displayed in the browser can have their source from the Climatics IC database via the cloud mapping mechanism, or directly from the controller via JSON or base64 ID mechanism. The purposes of the mechanism will be explained in the Web Graphics chapter. The Scope tool is used for commissioning, including the creation of watch pages that define which data points are available to be mapped to Climatics IC. The application program logic running on the controller is programmed via the Automation Project Studio. Let us summarize the values that Climatics IC creates for your company. Climatics IC optimizes services by a centralized alarm management. This allows to configure plant and cloud alarm notifications via cloud service. Plant data storages can record meaningful data that will serve as the basis for future service. User management is used to display data tailored to each user role. A geographical overview shows the plant status, based on freely definable key performance indicators, which can be filtered accordingly. Climatics IC offers many other benefits that are constantly being further developed. Search the online help for useful information. The document that is visible depends on your access rights. What do you need to know about a plant registration? Before connecting the controller to the internet, make sure that the cloud connection is enabled, the Tenant distributor key set, and any application loaded to the controller. Once a controller, or also called plant, is connected to the cloud, the activation key is validated. Login with the Tenant admin role. The plant pops up in the unassigned area if the validation of the controller was successful. Check out the exercise document for more detailed information. Various options are possible to assign and activate a controller. A tenant administrator can assign plants to any subtenants. In order to activate them, the administrator needs to be placed in the same tenant as the plant is located. For operation, the tenant administrator needs to add a plant user to the plant. A tenant admin role can pre-register the controller in a specific tenant with its activation key and application info mapping. The activation key is integrated in the DMC code and can be scanned from the packaging. The plant can be activated by a user with sufficient rights after the controller is registered in the cloud. This user is automatically added as the owner of the plant. In the next scenario, a user with the Manage Plants user role, installed in the same tenant as the controller, can activate the plant. This user is automatically added as the owner of the plant. Also, a new user can activate a plant and becomes the owner of the plant. A new, unknown user can sign up and enter the activation key to activate the plant. This user is registered and receives an initialization password. Also, the new user is automatically added as the owner of the plant. As the main tenant administrator, you have the rights to move the plant to another subtenant or activate the plant in the selected tenant. Once the plant is online, useful cloud information can be retrieved. OEM businesses are either organized globally or within a country. In a global organization, the main tenant may represent the headquarters, and the subtenants the country hubs. While in a country organization, the main tenant is representing the company, and the subtenants might be installer companies. The tenants are administrated by the tenant administrator. Depending on the organization, tenant management can look different. The first tenant administrator is added by Siemens to the main tenant. The main tenant administrator, based in the main tenant, can add subtenants to structure the business organization. The tenant administrator can add new administrator admin roles. The newly created admin roles managing their tenants. Only the tenant administrator can create new admin roles. The main tenant administrator can create dedicated tenant administrator for each subtenant. The tenant administrator and the subtenant cannot create new subtenants. They can manage their tenants independently from the main tenant by creating additional administrator roles. As the main tenant administrator, select the subtenant to whom you want to add the new administrator role. Go to Users and add the email address and the desired role. When you save, an email will be sent with the credentials. Let's look at the administrator roles in more detail. The administrator roles are organized into main and secondary roles that can be combined. The tenant administrator has the highest privileges as he can add tenants and new users with admin roles. The admin role operations has tenant-wide access to all plants, with read access by default. The main role can be combined with any other secondary admin roles. The site tenant viewer can activate plants. Main admin roles cannot be combined, while secondary roles are allowed. With regards to the tool, the tenants are created under the menu, Tenant, and new admin roles under the menu, Users. Let's take a look at the workflow when adding a new admin role. As the main tenant admin, a selection has been made in which tenant to add the new admin role. As a tenant admin from a subtenant, you can only create admin roles within the same tenant. If adding a new user, the user receives an email including an initialization password. An existing user will also receive an email but without a password. Until now, we know how to add new administrators. Now we look at plant and system users. Let's consider an example with 3 users. The first user is the administrator user we just added. The second, a plant, and the third, a system user. Under the menu item Users, you will find all users listed in the respective tenant. To get more detail about the user, select one. Under Roles, we see this user role. Selecting plants, we see to which plant the user is assigned, the tenant information, and the actual user role for the plant. In our example, this user is the owner of the plant. As you see, this user is not assigned to a system. Going back to the overview, we are going to look at the system user. Under Systems, we see that this user is assigned to a system and not to a plant. What have we learned from the demonstration? The plant and system users are indicated with user role, user. Each user could have multiple roles. It is recommended not to mix the roles. That means an administrator should not have the role of a plant user and vice versa. In this example, the user was added 3 times, once for each plant. The third user was added to a system user only. If this user had been added to a plant, the user would also appear in the plant section. Let's focus on user roles and their access privileges to a plant. The default user roles are defined in the Scope tool's security levels and applied in Climatics IC. For example, the user role, owner, has full access to the plant. The end user has the least privileges, as can be seen from the list. For example, the owner role can manage users, such as add or delete them. In comparison, the end user doesn't have such rights. At least one user is assigned to each system. It is also possible for one user to have access to several plants. In our example, the service user has access to all 3 plants. Instead of adding a user to all the plants in the tenant, there is another solution. A special role, tenant user, can be added to the user. The access rights are based on the assigned role he already holds. If you do not want all service technicians to have access to all plants, you can add a new role. This role can have the same rights as the service user. This special role can be assigned only once per tenant. Moreover, the role gets additional tenant administration rights such as enabling plants, adding new plant users. As mentioned, a new role can be added, or simply select an existing role and add the tenant user role. Let's see which user menus are available according to the assigned role and its privileges. For example, if you can't see the menu plant dashboard, that means that your user role does not have the corresponding privilege. The data points displayed in the plant dashboard, the alarms list, web access, web graphics of the plant or system, remote upgrade functionality that allows to fully maintain the plant from remote. Historical plant log files consisting of data point change tracking and command tracking such as upgrade or recovery parameters. Scheduler that allows to edit available schedulers and calendars. File upload that allows to upload files for plants and systems. Plant setting as stated on the right, and additional plant settings such as the activation of the plant subscription. The privileges for the integration of Building X are specified in the administrator's accounts. When the operation menu is selected, the user has the option to select either the system or the plant dashboard. When the plant is selected, the corresponding data points from the application are displayed. When another plant is selected with the same application, the ID number of the plant is exchanged in the background. The result is that the data points are loaded with the new plant ID number. In addition to the plant dashboard, a tenant dashboard can be programmed that provides useful information about the plant status. Every time a plant is selected, the data points from the respective plant is loaded, as the plant ID number is exchanged in the background. A plant dashboard shows data points from a dedicated plant only, while a system dashboard displays several plants. Let us summarize the different dashboard views. The plant dashboard shows the application of a dedicated plant. The dashboard view depends on the application, as it must be defined for each plant. The tenant dashboard provides general information independently from the application, such as plant status, telephone service number. The system dashboard shows consolidated information from various plants structured into one system. This is essential when managing service contracts for a complex plant or on a building level. All these views are impersonal, while mapped via an application set access table. That means that the application looks the same for users with the same access roles. It is possible to show a different application view depending on the access roles. The dashboards can be defined independently from the plant view for the tenant and the system view. All the dashboards are created in the dashboard editor, as we will see later. Moreover, a personal dashboard can display any data points from plants the user has access to. This view is saved in the user profile. The application set is used to standardize the application view for plants running the same application. We will explain the implementation of the application set based on the programming to be performed. An application set is created for air handling units, heat pumps, or chiller applications, for example. As next, versions of application sets can be created. For instance, an air handling unit application will be updated to a newer version. An application set is organized into three parts: the settings, the applications, and the documentation. The settings consist of the application name, and the device IDs, and the user access table that consists of user roles, security access level, web, dashboard, and plant files. Let us look what happens if a user opens a plant dashboard. In the user access table, access to the dashboard is granted according to the user role. The user access table is defined in the scope tool and downloaded to the controller. Climatix IC acts as a client that uses the access levels stored on the controller. For example, a service technician might see a different dashboard than a user. This requires that application-specific dashboard and web graphics files have been created. Another reason for a different dashboard view could be that not all of the plant option parameters are activated. For instance, one plant is using the preheating, while other plants doesn't. What happens if a controller type with ID 31 is installed, but not set in the device ID list? As a consequence, the application set cannot be mapped for this plant. What else is included in an application set? All relevant application files that are known from the scope tool, as well as the specific controller firmware file and the cloud files. Multiple web graphics and a dashboard file can be added. These files must first be created in the graphics and dashboard editor. Documentation files can also be provided according to the user roles. All files must be uploaded so that they can be assigned accordingly in the user access table. To perform a plant upgrade with Climatics IC, the following files must first be uploaded to the cloud. As you have seen, the application set contains all the important assets, which can be individually assigned to the plants. Let's take a look at an application set. We select the air handling unit template to see the configuration options. In the basic data section, the general parameters can be set. When the application set is created in the main tenant, it can be inherited by all subtenants. A crucial part is the configuration of the user access with the defined roles and access levels. Select the web graphic files to the corresponding roles. Multiple web graphic files can be selected compared to the dashboard, as only one file can be selected. The HMI pins are required for VSS 10 only. The alarm configuration and the data view strings can be adapted if needed. The parameter file can be saved automatically. In addition, a plant documentation file can be selected for download for specific user roles. The files selected from the list needs to be uploaded in the application section under Cloud Files. Let's look at some important plant parameters to create a system. A system defines a group of plants that belong to an operating unit. This facilitates the maintenance of the plants, as messages of this operating unit can be sent to dedicated users. In our example, the building consists of 3 plants installed in one building: a ventilation unit, a chiller, and a heat pump. An application set must be assigned for each plant to give plant users access to its dashboard. The plants in the building can be grouped into one system. This helps the building manager to get consolidated notification information. Grouping plants to a system requires that the plants are assigned to the same system. Each building could represent a separate system. Let us now consider the case where similar buildings are managed in one administrative unit. In this case, it is important that the system number is assigned the same in all buildings according to their application. This means that all air handling units are assigned to number 1. If the numbers are not assigned correctly, the system dashboard would mix data points from the different applications. Let's take a look at the system settings. Under the menu Plants, we select a plant. With the plant selected, the menu on the left will show all options, such as creating new plant users, plant notifications, and setting the plant parameters. Each plant needs to be assigned to an application set. The country and the time zone selection is important to ensure the correct alarm time notification. How to assign a plant to a system. Select a system from the drop-down list. The plant number must be the same throughout the system. In our example, the plant is used for an air handling application. This means that all plants that are operated with an air handling application must hold the number 1. The system we have just selected can be created under Systems. Different application sets can also be assigned at the system level to manage the user access to the system dashboard. Let us have a look at the workflow creating dashboards. The workflow is quite the same for plant, tenant, and system dashboards. Any user can access the dashboard editor. 2 variants of dashboards, plant and system, are available since the template is slightly different. The plant template is also used when creating a user or a tenant dashboard. Adding a new dashboard requires a title name and its translations in other languages. The creative work starts with adding tiles to the dashboard to represent the plant information. Let us have a brief overview. Starting with the text tile, is showing individual free text in various font sizes. The data point is showing values from the plant, such as a temperature. The line chart is showing the trend values over a time of period. Several line charts can be combined into a multi-chart pane. The values will be displayed in a trend line view. The circular gauge is showing values like an analog instrument. The bar chart is intended to compare absolute values from different sites. The bar gauge is showing several values in a comparing view. A web graphics tile, that is showing an overview, can be integrated independent from the application set graphics. The iframe tile allows to integrate web pages that support the iframe. A history list allows to go back to the last 10 previous steps in the creation of the dashboard. Once the tiles have been added, they can be arranged for specific use. For example, when a plant application set is used but not all controllers have the same parameter files loaded. The tiles with no values can be hidden and gaps between the tiles can be filled. Furthermore, the view for various devices can be previewed. For testing purposes, it is recommended using a user role that must have access to the plant or system dashboard. Dashboards can be exported as plant, tenant, or system dashboards. If the dashboard is used as a user dashboard, it can be sent directly to the user profile dashboard without exporting it. Any file can include several dashboards. Select the dashboards you want save or export. User dashboards can easily retrieve back into the editor. All the other dashboards can be imported and edited. When importing, the option to overwrite or add to existing dashboards can be selected. Let us take a quick overview of the basic workflow. Under Files, you find the options to import and export dashboard files. If you miss a window, simply activate the window here. We are adding a new dashboard by pressing the plus icon, entering a name, and adding new translation to the title name. Now we can start to design a new dashboard by drag and drop data points from the favorites. Another way is to add a new tile from the context menu. We add a tile and searching under tile properties for the data point. The history allows you to go back several steps. Let's activate those dashboards in the personal user dashboard. Simply select the command Save as User Dashboard. Make the selection you want to have and execute the command. Go to the dashboard to check the result. Let us have a look to the web graphics. Two mechanisms are available to display data in a web graphic. The cloud mapping, change of value mechanism pushes data to Climatics IC so that the last known value is always available in the cloud, even when the controller is offline. Cloud mapping requests are best suited for binary, multi-state and manual setpoints as the last known value is always shown. The JSON mechanism transfers the data from the controller's API directly to the web graphic via a tunnel connection. Also, base64 ID addressing behaves the same way as the JSON mechanism. JSON and base64 ID are best suited for analog data points in order to display their near real-time value, which may otherwise be hidden behind a COV threshold. If the controller is offline, however, then no value will be shown. Scope offers the possibility to assign the data points to the web graphic elements. Choose the appropriate mechanism depending on the purpose of use. Be aware that an appropriate subscription is required to map data to the Climatics IC. The user sees the graphic files depending on the user access configuration in the application set. Compared to dashboard files, multiple web graphic files can be uploaded to the application set. A web graphic tool is needed to edit SVG files. A web graphic can be imported or created from scratch. In the web graphic editor, forms, text, and groupings can be created to match the representation of the application best. It helps to name the elements created to better support the mapping of the data points later in the process. The web graphic created needs to be exported and imported in the online graphic configurator. The web graphic element needs to be selected and mapped with the data point using one of the mapping queries. Depending on the element, several options are possible to hide or change its color. For example, a text element is mapped with the data point value. Additionally, the value can be hidden, or the text can change the color. The form element can change its color, and can be hidden. The grouped element can be hidden or visible. All elements can change their state through binary or multi-state inputs, as these data points must also be mapped. Testing the graphics with the end user is crucial to ensure that the web graphics is viewable. Let's quickly jump to the web graphics editor for a quick look. We have already loaded a graphic in the online configurator. On the right side you see the element inspector that shows all elements with its grouping. Once we have selected an element, we can see in the mapping properties the data point value that was copied and pasted from the scope tool. The key performance indicator values are useful information for the tenant site viewer to get a quick overview about plants and systems. By default, the following watch items are available. Additional watch items can be defined for analog, binary, and multi-state objects. A number of values can be assigned to the three colors. When two binary values are the same, the worst status color will be displayed. As you can see, additional watch items can be added and assigned to plants or system. A useful information could be that the filter of an air handling unit is polluted. The above watch items you see are inherited from the main tenant. Either use or disable them for this tenant. The application info mapping can be used for the pre-registration. Once this value is filled in, and a new controller connected to this tenant will take over this information into the plant settings. If the name from the application set fits, the application set for the controller will be automatically loaded. Let's take a look at the concept of inherited parameters in Climatics IC. This is useful to standardize the reuse of templated throughout the whole organization. The tenant administrator in the main tenant can create user roles that can be used in all sub-tenants. Also, an application set for a heat pump created on the main tenant can be reused in the sub-tenants. If a user role is created in the subtenant and the application set in the main tenant, a user mapping is required. The user role of the main tenant must match the user role of the application set. Also, the KPIs can be inherited from the main tenant. In the subtenants, the main KPIs can be reused. The alarm dashboard allows to view active alarms and alarm history for plants or systems. If a system is set up, the alarms are managed by the system and not by the plant. Various alarm messages can be created to send to specific stakeholders. For example, one stakeholder could be the installer who wants to receive critical alarms. Another stakeholder could be the building owner who wants to be informed about the status. As a result, various alarm messages need to be created. Let's look at a message for an installer. The installer wants to be informed about appearing and disappearing alarms. The subject can be created using tokens and free text. It is useful to add the source of the message to the subject, followed by the tenant and the plant name. The site name token is equal to the plant name. The message itself can also be defined accordingly. The message can be assigned to the alarm classes corresponding to the BACnet standard as implemented in the program logic. In addition, it could be defined that messages are sent to one recipient during the week, and to another recipient on weekends. When servicing or troubleshooting a plant, the upgrade function and other commands can be very helpful. Restarting the controller or stopping and starting the controller. Cloud mapping forces the upload of the monitoring pages in case of problems. Also, a diagnostic trace file can be created and uploaded to the cloud. The last four commands have no effect on the application or the controller. If the table is green, it means that the uploaded files in the application set correspond to those of the running controller. Now let's switch to another plant. Red means that the files running on the controller are older than those uploaded to the application set. To update the plant, the upgrade command can be executed. Before the upgrade is performed, the parameters are saved to be restored after the upgrade. In the task menu, the active task can be monitored, and when it is completed, the executed task can be found in the history list. We are closing the onboarding session with a brief introduction on how to use and navigate in Climatics IC. After logging in, you can check for the account details. Select the language if not already set by the local browser setting. If the user is a main tenant administrator, a tenant must be selected. All others will only see their assigned tenant. The top menu displayed depends on the user role privileges. As a tenant and application administrator, you have full access. Checking a plant, we choose operating and the desired plant to operate. When a plant is selected, it is displayed on the next level. To select another plant, simply go back on that level. The available menu items depend on the user assigned role. This user has access to the data points, alarms, web access, and so on. Under Files, for instance, documents related to application can be downloaded. Now it is up to you to gain your own experience with Climatics IC.